Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
It's good to be on this channel again. I can feel the energy.
Can you?
Yes.
I work really hard on that.
Yes. The energy has already inundated me, even though we have just begun.
And we've been talking for like 30 minutes, but the people
Yes.
don't know that.
You're breaking the illusion of production.
Sorry. Maybe I'll cut that out so no one knows.
Very
No,
meta. We're postmoderning it up.
we
So,
are.
what are we doing today, Shelley?
Well, I have two options.
Yes.
Two pairs. The first pair being cash and trash.
Yeah.
Because it was garbage, we could talk about trash. I kind of like that.
Right. I didn't read my book that I had picked out for trash.
You picked something out for trash?
Yeah, remember I was going to read the Angels and Demons, Dan Brown?
Oh, yeah. You
Didn't read a single page. Not one single page, and it was literally in front of me every single day. And I was like, I have the audio too, so and it's an illustrated edition, so it would have been an experience. You know, the ultimate in indulging trash or something. And then a month flew by and I was like, oh, just like last year. Just like last year.
But last year we slayed.
Yeah, but I was gonna slay more and do Dad Breath as well.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, maybe if I was on, peak performance last year, I could have been at the Da Vinci Code this year. But now I'm so far behind. I'm -2 Dan Browns.
Well, you can read Dan Brown other than Garbagas.
It's true.
I mean, I don't know why you would, but
Yeah. So cash and trash and
or Best and Pest.
a pest. I guess cash and trash.
Okay. I feel like we've done it before though. Have we?
It doesn't ring a bell.
Okay. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
We're doing the
So
trashes though today.
If you're anti-capitalist, you'll just have to suck it up and understand that cash is good, and it'll just be this one format where you have to make an exception and
True.
just
hopefully your hosts will be charming enough to help you go with it.
And are we going from least fave to or most hated?
We're doing
least
trash
hated
on
to most?
Yes.
Yeah. Are we doing the best here or the worst?
No, the worst. We're doing the worst because you're doing the best on your channel. Yeah. Do you want to start?
So least unlikable.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. The one you like the most. The one you like the most out of the least liked books.
Yes. Okay. That will probably be Wool, the Silo #1 book by Hugh Howey. And I think it was mostly, it was like, it's still 3 stars, but the reason why it's like, negative is because I watched the show first, and I think the show does a much better job with the adaptation. Like the short story compilation anthology thing of the first book feels a little less cohesive than the way that they brought everything together in Wool. And it just, or in Silo. Yeah. Like
in
the
Silo,
show is called Silo.
Yeah.
It just all feels like it flows really well and you couldn't tell really. But it then does change characters in like a more fun way where you're like, oh, this is the main character of the show, and then you're like, oh, it's not the main character of the show, and then it does it again, and you're like, oh, that's not the main character of the show, and then in the book you're like, I understand that the perspective will be changing because of the formatting.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Interesting. I told you this, but I had read it. I had started it like years ago, like 6 or 7 years ago, and I got through the first bid and then I DNF'd it. I got through like the first third, and then I got to the point where I was just like, I don't, or maybe even got halfway through, and I was like, I'm not enjoying this of the book. and I just didn't love it. I mean, I thought some of the parts were innovative, but if I'm remembering correctly, weren't all the short stories like published at different points as well?
Yeah, I think so. And then it was kind of like a breakout hit, right? It was like a self-published Amazon thing
Oh,
where
was it?
where he had short stories, and then they did so well that I think he eventually published those by, some imprint or whatever, coalesced them all, and then he did the second book and then the third book.
Interesting.
So,
yeah,
yeah, the show's a lot better, I think, though. And yeah, it feels a slightly atypical dystopian because it concentrates a lot more on the human problems and like the character development, which again is like cherry picked in the show rather than the book kind of like feeling like a debut author, basically. With those aspects. Mm-hmm. What is your least disliked?
It's not, it was just not it was not the vibe. Like, I really enjoyed it, and it's one of your favorites, I think. And so I want to go back and read it. So it's not that I disliked it. It was just I didn't have three. And so I had to talk about one that I started and DNF'd for now, but I want to go back to it. And it's Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey, right? Or James, right? James Corey?
Yeah, it's like S.A. Corey, I think, but
Corey.
it's two writers. It's a duo. That's why.
Oh! I think you told me that before. I liked it. It was just I got it in my head that I wanted to read something a little bit more challenging and a little less brain candy, and so I ended up choosing something else and putting that aside because I kind of could see myself reading about halfway through and then being a little bit annoyed by the commercialization, like the level at which I was reading and how long it was taking me because I have gotten busy this month. I could see the future of my mood that I was predicting. And I could see like that maybe it would be commercial, like it being commercial fiction, kind of a longer commercial fiction book, that I would feel stuck in that vibe for too long because I have gotten busier. Whereas if I just was sort of free as a bird, it would just take me a few days or like a week to read it. And then I would be like, oh, that was great and such a wonderful experience, and move on really quickly. But because I've gotten really busy, it would have taken me like 2.5 weeks. And then I would have been irritated that it took me so long, and I would be ready to move on. And I was just like, I know what's going to happen. And so I'll just like, I'm going to stop it here. I'm going to go back to it when I feel like that's the vibe. But it wasn't the vibe.
Like,
3 weeks ago.
I think the first book is like kind of barely passable, basically.
Right.
Like, I tell people if they can get through the first book and they can enjoy it, then it's all up, or downhill. Downhill. It's easier and
smooth.
Better. Yeah. It's the first one feels like a debut and also feels like probably the editors and the publisher shoehorned it in such a way as they knew it would be a commercial success, like it has tropey things and like they're not able to fully diverge, I think, from like a formula type deal. So it feels like the most commercial, it feels like the most basic, and it only gets like more brain candy ish. Like when I finished it, my brother was like, you need to give the second book a try because that one's like the absolute worst. And then that's when I think I got hooked, maybe. So
interesting.
The first one I was very like, I don't know if I want to keep reading. And then
but it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. It wasn't like I was like, this is terrible. It was just like I could just tell it wasn't the vibe.
Yeah, it's more like just trying to be fun out there.
Yeah. I get that. What's your middling disliked book?
It is Rain by Joe Hill, which is a comic book.
Oh.
And it's Eisner. I need to sneeze.
Oh no! Look at the light.
Do I?
It'll make you sneeze.
Maybe not.
Okay. False alarm.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happened there. But yeah, it was another Eisner thing that poked me to read it, but I've had seen it around, and I believe it's an adaptation from a story that he had done elsewhere, like maybe a novel or something like that. I can't remember. But anyway, this is the comic, and I think made it about halfway into it because it immediately starts with like very tropey dystopian stuff where there's a queer character who's in a queer relationship who's really happy, and then a dystopia happens, and then like nothing good happens basically, which is very queer typing trope stuff, where like just let queer people be happy. And in the 90s they were just like, no, that doesn't happen. And before that,
yeah.
like, yeah, the ultimate tragedies would always happen to the queer characters, and they're like, this will happen, but also it will be the sole perspective of the entire thing. And it's very like bloody, gruesome, and yeah, like shows things that it probably doesn't really need to show in so doing. But also it just didn't make any sense. And it made sense that it didn't, because the character's perspective is so solipsistic and she doesn't understand how this thing is happening either. But yeah, it just feels, even when some of it is explained, it's just like somebody's science experiment or something where they're like, if this happened with global warming effects mixed with this, then all of this could maybe happen, and then that would be a dystopia. And I'm just like, I don't think that makes any sense at all. Like, basically, I think it's like they're not ice even, they're like some sort of geo icicle looking things that rain down, and that's why it's called rain. But it like kills people, like it skewers them like little tiny pinprick things, and then they like you see people with stuff jetting out of them and stuff, but it's all tiny, like acupuncture. Yeah. And I'm just like, so that's the dystopia that everyone got rained on, and it's still happening with like
needles.
Yeah. And like there's really no goal after this happens at the beginning too, because you're like, she was happy, she was in a queer relationship, and then everything went to hell, and you're like, okay, so what now? And she's like, I'm just gonna go over there. I'm just like, okay, like I don't understand. And then it gets more tropey from there, like
weird.
Yeah, like she immediately meets guys that probably are going to try to sexually assault her, and then I was just like, yeah.
So you DNF'd it?
Yeah, I think I got like a quarter of the way in or something. The artwork was really nice looking, like it was the illustrations and stuff were really good, if it wasn't showing gruesome deaths of people acupunctured to death and stuff. But yeah, it was just really not for me.
Yeah, I'm looking at I looked up the cover because I was so curious. But yeah, interesting. Weird.
What's your middle dislike?
Well,
did you actually finish this one?
Yeah, I did. It was, and you knew all about it. You were like, you should just stop reading it. You hate it so much. I was like,
live your best life.
Yeah, I know. And it was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I'm
shocked that this would be a flop.
I think that like once a year, a very, 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 very popular book grips me, and I'm just like too curious to not read it. And this year it was Sarah J. Maas.
But at least you read it for Garb August too, right?
Yeah. And for that, it worked. And
it worked as garbage.
I guess it's just like, I wish I was one of those people that just went along with it and thought it was great. And like, I'm reading something and even though it's trashy, it's like totally working. But I just couldn't get behind it. I just like struggled through the whole thing. I mean, I think you pointed out that it was a lot more subversive. Like at one point, the female character is like competing essentially and doing these like competition like tasks to save the male character, and that's sort of a little more subversive than you know what like the normal trope would be. So I could appreciate some of the aspects in it, but ultimately there was a lot of snarling. There was a lot of like really bad dialogue. It was just like, Sarah, I don't like humans, but you're different. And you know, she's like, well, I don't like fairies, but you're different. And you're just like, oh, okay, right.
You have to like be a person with brain chemistry that understands disliking someone immensely yet also wanting to sleep with them, and I just never understood that. You know, like I've never been like, I hate this person, but I also want to sleep with them. I'm just like, what? That doesn't.
I didn't think about that.
Is that like it must be like a self-destructive thing, you know, like when people, I don't know, it's definitely a trope and a thing, you know, and so when you put it in fiction and kind of make it, you know, almost like a kink or whatever, I can see why people would be like, oh yeah, like I can indulge in this fantasy where I'm, you know, hating a person. Yeah, but we're sleeping together.
Can't even like, with this conversation just right now.
Okay, but yeah, when I read, I'm just like, I don't understand these people. Like, what are they? Why are they? You know, like just because you tell me a thing doesn't mean it needs to be unexplained. But it's just so tropey that it's just a thing that's in culture, and people enjoy that trope, I guess. You know.
I guess so. I guess I'm like you, and I'm not that person either. Like if I don't like you, I just straight up don't like you. I don't it's not that I secretly want to like flirt with you. I'm just like, stay away. Like I don't like you. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess that was some of it. There was also the like she's not your normal girl. Like Ted pointed that out to me.
Definitely a lot of that.
And so you know, she's like different, and you know, I mean, it was like it wasn't all horrible, but it just like I could just see what it was doing, and I was just like, I don't buy into it, and so thus it didn't work for me. I could never let it go of like what she was trying to do. I was like, okay, so we're doing this. I know.
Not like other girls, but also I want to sleep with the beastly guy.
Yeah.
Just like, okay.
Oh yeah, and he was like sparkly, and I was just like, I mean, you know, glitter on guys, I'm not against it, but I was just like, I'm not gonna be be like, oh, be still my ever beating heart when I see that. I'm just like, you know, like I do love me some Bowie, but not all the time. So
yeah, the Fae are. My problem was the world building in that book, where I was just like, there are aspects to her character that feel slightly subversive, but the world itself feels like any generic fantasy world with Fae in it, right? Like slightly different, I guess, because of the, I don't know, the apocalypse or whatever, where like the humans are, you know, little pets or whatever and looked down on by the Fae because of that war or whatever. But I was still like, okay, these Fae are like copy pasta Fae. Like there's nothing unique to them at all. You know, they're hot people that make bad deals with people, tricky.
Oh yeah. You mentioned that, but see, I don't think I know enough like Fae stuff. I don't even really notice that.
It's all new to me.
It was all new to me, but I was just like, this world kind of dumb. Like it's just not working for me. Like that was just my reaction to it. It's just like, okay, that's cool, I guess. Like I guess, but then I'm just like, I can't really like when I have trouble envisioning something that's supposed to be like so vivid. I was just like, I don't really get it. Like, am I supposed to like this? Like, I don't know. There was moments like that where I was like, am I supposed to think sparkly dudes are hot? Like, I just don't understand. Like, what am I supposed to like here? Just tell me what to do. And I was just like,
you have to look for the phrase "hard beating like a jackhammer," then you'll know.
Oh,
it's always beating like a jackhammer. I'm like, so there's jackhammers in this fantasy world? Is that what's happening? Like,
is it? I just know that there was just a lot of like growling and snarling, and I was just like, I don't understand. I don't understand.
Yeah, it's for the people that watched you know, Beauty and the Beast, and they're like, how would that work sexually?
I loved Beauty and the Beast as a child, okay? So don't touch it, all right? You're not allowed. So what was your worst book? I think we have the same one. Since you're starting to trample on my childhood memories. How dare you?
My worst book, most disliked book, is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. Is that your number one as well?
Yeah.
Number one dislike? Yeah.
Number one.
Yeah. I don't know. I felt that book was like a little bit of a train wreck. So I'm sure everybody has heard of it and everybody knows what it's about, basically. Yeah. But the problem for me is difficult to articulate because there's like a plot beat at the very end when you learn kind of in a postmodern way what the text is that you are reading. You know, we are given meta information about it, and that makes it more convoluted to me and less cohesive because we're stuck in like, you know, the head space of June, who steals a manuscript and then proceeds to like make all these decisions justifying her actions with, you know, the most motivated thinking anyone has ever partaken in, basically.
And it's a manuscript that a Asian friend wrote, and June is a white girl, which only complicates things even more. It's like taking something that is not yours and that she is technically yeah.
But yeah, the problem is that it's so solipsistic from her head, and it gets further so when the meta knowledge is introduced, that it actually undermines what the book does when it tries to make points about certain issues about June, like when she doesn't believe that she's being casually racist but obviously is, or when she is like clearly trying to, I don't know, like do something morally wrong and get support from other white people, you know, like the other writers who are also doing pretty well or whatever, and they have that chat and stuff like that. All of that is kind of undermined because ostensibly this text is her trying to make a rebuttal about something that we don't know about until the very end. Mm-hmm. And that is supposed to be the overarching plot generally, but it's actually doesn't come together as like a plot. So it just feels like a whole bunch of memes and regurgitation of like discourse around these elements that you could get better knowledge of in any sense. Like you could just follow this stuff on social media. You could read articles that people have read or written about appropriation of these things and get all of the knowledge that you need about it. But a novel still needs to have a plot and a character, and yet the meta, like the postmodernism of it, actively undermines both of those aspects, and it calls into question the ability of the writer ostensibly writing the text of Yellowface that we are reading, you know, like so it's all very like, I don't know, it all felt very like pseudo intellectual and put into a commercial bracket for me, where I was just kind of like, if it had not been trying to do all of these things, it would have been passable. But because it introduces even more complications, it gets so convoluted and that it just doesn't make any sense. But the ultimate sin is that it's just boring for most of it. Like 3/4 of the book is just boring. So,
well, your thought process is a little, I would say, I think you're a bit more articulate. I had problems with it for different reasons. Mm-hmm. I thought it was, so I thought the marketing worked so well because it was supposed to be like unhinged woman status, and that we were going to get like, I thought I was going to get Bunny from Mona Awad, but like in a different way, in like this different new sort of, in like Kuang's way, you know, or Kuang's way. And I was just like, it really was quite boring and sort of like par for the course in terms of, and then I was like, even by the time, like, oh, the Twitter mob attacking the main character that you don't like already, so she's getting what she deserves. Like let's just take that thing. But I'm like, Twitter's not even called Twitter anymore; it's called X. So it like feels dated, even by this point now. And she couldn't have known that. But then I wanted what I was like clinging on to by the time I sort of realized that it was just not the thing. I was clinging on to the fact that I thought it was supposed to go like off the rails by the end of it all. And I thought it was like on the rails the whole time. Like I wanted her to turn into a cat and like I don't know, like start eating humans or something. Like I just wanted it to like go off. Like I wanted it to just be like bananas, cuckoo's crazy, amazing, off the rails, kind of like Mona Awad it was, like her stuff is. And I just thought like it was just so level, like it was just so commercial. It was so less literary, so commercial fiction with sort of a theme or message with a capital M. And then it just like, and then it stayed on the rails. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I just thought it was going to be literary with subversive themes and that it was going to be like just so much more nuanced and interesting. But the question that she posed, which is like, who can write what? Who's allowed to write what? Which was like the sort of big, like one of the questions that she asked, which was really interesting. And I thought like it was going to get there in a really interesting way. It just ended up being that she didn't think about it very deeply or widely or broadly. It was just very like, par for the course. Yeah.
All of the major themes and topics that would have been interesting are just inserted and then as basic plot beats and then moved past. Like there's no real rumination, or it's even strange because it is like it should be a big M for message book, but it actually doesn't make it explicit when she is doing these things incorrectly or not. So the reader has to already be on the winning team basically to understand all of the things that she is doing wrong or right, aside from like the there's a few characters that will call her out from like 2 or 3 times or something like that, but there's so many elements of her being casually racist or casual with other things that I think it would go over the head of most people. And so I'm just like, well, if this is a capital messaging book, why is it so inexplicit about certain things but explicit about others? And then she has self inserts where she like is like, oh, ironically, when I did this is what actually brought me down, like as a sort of foreshadowing tool. But then again, with the postmodern elements working together, I'm just like, but she at the end says what her explicit thesis is for this book, and then throughout it she doesn't stick to it. So I'm like, so are we supposed to infer that she's also a shitty writer? Is that what's happening? Like it calls into question so many elements of the book that I'm just like, this is so incohesive and not rewarding to get to the end, because it just makes it more undermined. And I was just kind of like, so the messaging doesn't work, the characters just the most dead boring person in the world, right? Where you're just like, oh, just anything happen, and then when it happens you're like, oh, it's just a basic thing that would happen in real life. Like somebody texted her and now there's a conflict. I'm just like, I don't care.
I was sort of surprised at how I think you're putting it perfectly. It was just really not it was not the thing at all. And I really wanted it to not be on. It was really like a lot of the plot was on social media, and I don't really love books like that. So, oh, there's a mob out there that's on the internet. I'm like, and then there was times where I was just like, just get off the internet, and it would save you a lot of heartache. And it was just like, she never called to question like her actions or why she was on the internet as much as she was or anything like that.
Is this going to be about cancel culture now? No.
It wasn't.
Is this going to be about appropriation? Not really. Is this going to be about casual racism? Is this going to be about publishing? All of these things slightly in the fact that they are mentioned, but they're not actually gone into in any meaningful way, right? So it's just, you're basically just sort of rooting for the home team, or you don't agree with her and you're going to dip from the book anyway.
Right. Yeah, it was terrible. It was not good. It was like not good. And they like, I was so sold on the marketing of it all. They really, I thought it was going to be like this book for me, and then it just was not. It was not. So yeah, well, let's go on to bigger and better things on your channel with the best of. I've got great books.
Yeah.
talk about.
Yeah, we're going to the cash money.
Yes, we are.
Away
We're gonna
from
go
the
to
trash.
cash, away from the trash, because there was some trash. There was some trash. So,
There
all
was.
right. Well, thanks for being on my channel.
Thank you for letting me digress heavily.
That's fine. Yeah, that was great. That was great. All right. Well, see you. Bye.